Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, the United States Supreme Court makes a ruling with New York's gun law. The gun law that says you must prove why you need a gun was shut down by Supreme Court justices, saying it violates the Second Amendment.
This decision isn't just reckless, it's reprehensible. It's not what New Yorkers want.
But the National Rifle Association says this is a landmark win for Second Amendment rights. Israel and Iran have been battling each other for years outside of public view. Now that could change.
All of these countries that have been victims of the Iranian regime's proxy activity to start to hold Iran accountable rather than the proxies.
As rising inflation continues to affect American families, we'll talk to the experts on ways to save money.
Money control is 90% behavior. We have to change the behavior. We all know how to do well. Spend less than you earn. It's pretty easy on paper, right? But then that crazy thing called life happens.
And critics say Disney is increasing its woke practices surrounding sexual identity and gender.
Parents again saying, wait a minute, why do we have to import a sexual message into kids' programming?
Now some parents are looking for entertainment alternatives for their families. All these stories and more are coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with this. New York gun owners can remain steadfast in their convictions to own and carry a firearm. The news comes after Supreme Court justices struck down the state's old law that required people to prove why they needed to carry a gun in the first place. Brody Carter has our top story.
In a 6-3 vote, the Supreme Court's conservative majority ruled that New York's century-old law requiring citizens to show proper cause to carry guns for self-defense violates the Second Amendment. A huge win for gun owners and a clear defeat for gun control advocates.
What it's saying is that if you're a legal, lawful citizen, they can't take your right to keep and bear arms away from you. I mean, I think it's just that simple.
Tom King, the plaintiff who took this case to the High Court and president of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, says responsible gun owners shouldn't be the issue and that politicians in New York need to focus on criminals. Top New York Democratic leaders, on the other hand, blasted the court's decision.
Today, the Supreme Court is sending us backwards in our efforts to protect families and prevent gun violence.
This decision has made every single one of us less safe from gun violence.
President Biden also criticized the ruling.
I think it's a bad decision. I think it's not reasoned accurately, but I'm disappointed.
Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the majority, said, quote, "The New York proper cause requirement violates the Constitution because it only allows public carry licenses when an applicant shows a special need for self-defense, and that the Constitution protects, quote, an individual's right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home." In his dissent, Justice Stephen Breyer referred to the recent rash of mass shootings sweeping the nation. The court's decision comes after the shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde, which triggered historic congressional action on gun control.
The motion to concur with an amendment is agreed to.
Just hours after the decision was released, the Senate passed a gun reform bill focused on background checks for buyers under 21, preventing people convicted of domestic violence from owning guns, and providing funding for school security and mental health programs. That bill now goes to the House. However, the debate over gun laws at the state level is far from over.
We should have the right of determination of what we want to do in terms of our gun laws in our state.
We are not the problem. The problem is the criminals and the wrongdoers in the state, and the politicians have to learn that.
The court's ruling means similar laws in other states are likely to face challenges as well. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Amid all the major decisions at the Supreme Court, the Biden administration is proposing sweeping changes to the Title IX law outlawing discrimination based on sex in schools and colleges. The major points include overhauling campus sexual assault rules, expanding protections for transgender students, and expanding colleges' responsibilities in addressing sexual misconduct. The proposal comes on the 50th anniversary of the Title IX women's rights law. For years, Israel and Iran have been fighting each other, but it hasn't been open warfare. They've been doing it quietly outside of public view. Now that's changing. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, the shadow war between the two enemies is coming more and more out into the open.
Recently, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announced new rules of engagement with Iran called Operation Octopus. He said, in the past year, the state of Israel has taken action against the head of the terrorist octopus. The days of immunity in which Iran attacks Israel and spreads terrorism via its regional proxies but remains unscathed are over.
I think it's well overdue for both Israel and Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrainis, all of these countries that have been victims of the Iranian regime's proxy activity to start to hold Iran accountable rather than the proxies.
Some see a ratcheting up of Israel's covert and even overt operations to thwart Iran's nuclear and conventional missile and drone programs. It could explain the mysterious deaths recently of a number of Iranian nuclear scientists and military leaders. Another example, Israel's recent attack on the Damascus airport, which Israel sees as a major conduit of Iranian weapons on their way to Hezbollah in Syria. Now Israel says Iran is threatening to retaliate by kidnapping or killing Israelis in the region, and especially Turkey.
We're currently witnessing Iranian attempts to attack Israelis in various overseas locations. The security services of the State of Israel are working to thwart attempted attacks before they are launched. We will continue to strike those who send the terrorists and those who send them. Our new rule is, whoever sends, pays.
Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz announced a regional cooperative Middle East air defense led by the U.S.
It can help with anything related to Iran's attempts to attack countries of the region using rockets, missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs. This program is already operative and has already thwarted Iranian attempts that I spoke about on other occasions, both here and in the Middle East in general.
With the collapse of the Israeli government, Middle East expert Eli Konim says Israel is entering a dangerous season.
The regime can see all of this as a moment of vulnerability for the Israelis and try to take advantage. My hope is that the Israelis, as much as they're dealing with elections and cobbling together coalitions and all that, that they do keep their focus on what they call the existential threat to them that the Iranian regime poses.
All this comes as the Iran-U.S. nuclear deal seems on the brink of collapse. Senators on both sides say it's unlikely Iran will agree to any new deal to limit its development of nuclear weapons. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
You can see more news from the Middle East with Chris and his team on the CBN News channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern on Jerusalem Dateline, or check it out on the CBN News app. As Russia continues to invade Ukraine, European nations are opening their arms to refugees escaping the war, especially Poland, where more than 3.5 million Ukrainians have fled. One family prayed to God for direction after they crossed the border and found shelter and comfort at a home supported by CBN Ministries.
When I heard the sound of the explosions, it felt like someone was attacking my heart. Didn't know what it was, but I panicked.
A friend texted Anya saying Russians had invaded Ukraine. She didn't believe it until the attack continued.
I heard the sound of the rockets, and I was afraid that the bomb was going to destroy our home and kill us all. It was horrible.
While her father had to stay behind, Anya fled the war-torn country with her mother and sister. When they arrived in Poland, they didn't know where to go.
I prayed to Jesus and God the Creator for our safety. I knew that He would rescue our family.
God heard their cry for help, and Anya's family landed here at this refugee home, which is supported by Operation Blessing and Orphans Promise.
I'm so thankful to God that we arrived here unharmed. He answered my prayer. The moment we got here, all my fear and panic went away. I'm so grateful for the people of God who have helped us.
Operation Blessing and Orphans Promise are sheltering many Ukrainian families just like Anya's at this refugee home. From traumatized children to heartbroken parents and grandparents, everyone is being supported and loved here.
Praise God, we're safe here, and we have food and other things we need here. I would like to thank all the donors and volunteers who have come forward to help and support us.
Great to see that ministry taking place. In other news, today marks the one-year anniversary of the apartment building collapse in Surfside, Florida. Early this morning in downtown Miami, the Paramount Miami World Center skyscraper displayed a message of solidarity. Today, city officials will hold a public memorial honoring the 98 people who died as a result of the collapse at the Champlain Towers South condos. Some of the family of the victims and First Lady Jill Biden will be in attendance. The investigation into what caused the collapse is still ongoing. Coming up, as inflation continues to rise, we show you ways to save money. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. The sky-high inflation and a hangover from pandemic spending sprees has some struggling to balance their budgets. Despite the challenges, financial experts say there are ways to recover and even start saving. CBN's Brody Carter shows us how.
It kind of goes back, and I hate it, but that dreaded B word, right? The budget.
Economists and financial experts recommend going back to basics if you're struggling to balance your checkbook.
And it starts with that budget. And I think many people, they have no idea how they are spending their money.
Inflation is at a 40-year high due to pandemic relief efforts, supply chain problems, and energy supply disruptions given Russia's war against Ukraine.
It's a little bit to be determined. We could still see some high inflation numbers in April and May.
Just last month, energy rose 11%, and food prices are up about 8.5% from last year. Dr. Stephen Skanke, chief economic advisor at Keel Point, says the U.S. picked up some bad spending habits as COVID relief poured in.
As it turned out, almost 70% were receiving, of those receiving unemployment, were receiving more than they had been receiving when they were working.
Especially during COVID, when a lot of us were staying at home, right? We were forced to. We got on that Amazon, and it was just that easy click to kind of make ourselves feel happy, because those were very tough times.
All of that happy clicking led to a record $204 billion spent online last Christmas. Given historical job growth, wage gains, and supplemental government spending, stats show real wages have still declined.
In retrospect, we overshot on that. We put too much money out there. We didn't have the economy ready to absorb it.
Money control is 90% behavior. We have to change the behavior. We all know how to do well. Spend less than you earn. It's pretty easy on paper, right? But then that crazy thing called life happens, and we start spending more. So
Danny Kofke taught school for 18 years. Now he's an author and mentor, helping families manage their finances.
I recommend starting off, track your spending for at least 1 month. Then at the end of the month, you're able to analyze it, and you can see, oh, we went to maybe Starbucks 5 times, or we did this, whatever it may be in your own personal, spending habits. Then you can look at it and you can cut out those things that are not necessary.
A popular economic principle is that poor people spend all their money, while the middle class saves and the rich invest. Given current economic uncertainties, Kofke and Skanke suggest investing in wise areas like a 401k and trimming the daily spending.
Think about how many hours of work go into a purchase. Let's just say, and I'm just going to make easy math, let's just say you made $20 an hour and something costs $200. Well, think about that. You're going to have to work 10 hours to buy that item.
Kofke says you can cut down on spending and build your rainy day fund without sacrificing fun altogether, although you need to practice. And if you begin tracking your spending now, you may be able to save money as early as the next month or so. Brody Carter, CBN News.
In other news, if you're looking to travel by car during the summer months, here are some tips to help you save on gas. Slow down and drive the speed limit. Avoid hard accelerations. When approaching lights or stop signs, take your foot off the gas early. Allow your car to reach a slower speed before stopping. Also use cruise control to maintain a consistent speed, and make sure your tires are properly inflated. Still ahead, Disney has been receiving backlash for its woke agenda. Now some parents are seeking entertainment alternatives for their families. We'll have the story next. Welcome back. Disney films and TV programs were once the gold standard of family-friendly entertainment. Today, the company is touting increasingly woke practices surrounding sexual identity and gender. That has a growing number of parents seeking entertainment alternatives for their families. Caitlin Burke reports.
Long considered the place to turn for family-friendly entertainment, recent moves and statements by the Walt Disney Company indicate a turn toward a cultural agenda that threatens that legacy and possibly its future.
I grew up with The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday nights, and you curl up with a blanket with your family and watch a great Disney movie, and that company doesn't exist anymore.
Back in March, Disney made headlines for publicly opposing a Florida law that bans public school lessons, including sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Since then, top executives have signaled a greater shift towards telling stories that explore those topics. Whistleblowers from Disney sent these videos to conservative activist Chris Rufo, citing concern about the company's direction.
I don't have to be afraid to let's have these two characters kiss. Let's in the background. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness.
And now we know, as my son texted me this morning, Gen Z is 30 to 40% queer than the other generation's mom. So Disney better get with it.
Burke went on to express support for increasing LGBTQ characters in entertainment content, with the goal of 50% of all regular and recurring roles across the Disney universe coming from, quote, underrepresented groups.
Disney has been a little bit on the slow end to make some of those changes, but now it feels like they have jumped to the forefront and they have said, we're not only going to represent, but we are going to be in an activist position promoting this agenda.
The Disney Pixar film Lightyear, out this month, features a lesbian couple, and Thor: Love and Thunder, due out in July, has a major LGBTQ lead character. Adam Holtz, director of Focus on the Family's Plugged In, says in an effort to stay culturally relevant, Disney is losing touch with a large portion of its audience.
There are parents again saying, wait a minute, why do we have to import a sexual message into kids' programming? And so even if we talk beyond the specific LGBT agenda, I think there's concern that why does everything have to be sexualized? Is it possible to just have entertainment that's innocent, that leaves that for later and doesn't bring that into everything we're doing?
According to a Trafalgar Group national survey, nearly 70% of American voters say they're less likely to do business with Disney due to their push to expose young children to sexual ideas.
Disney was absolutely synonymous with trust. There's all this other stuff out there, but Disney was okay. And now Disney's just another entertainment provider, and we don't trust them, and we don't want that agenda necessarily preached to our children.
This has led to calls to boycott or cancel Disney. And while some families are choosing to cut the cord, Holtz says ultimately this is an opportunity for people to be more intentional about their entertainment.
I don't think we have to say we can never watch a Disney movie again. It's stepping away from the trajectory of how we get our entertainment and stepping into a more intentional place in terms of what are we going to watch, why are we going to watch it, and how are we going to do that?
One alternative gaining steam is Angel Studios. It focuses on content from independent creators and follows a unique customer model. The audience is in complete control.
They get to decide what gets greenlit. They get to, the creators actually get bonuses because the audiences give feedback. And when the creators produce what the audiences are expecting, then the creators get bonuses.
One of the company's most groundbreaking efforts, The Chosen. Neil Harmon, founder and CEO of Angel Studios, says the series became such a hit because it was everyday people, rather than Hollywood executives, choosing the content they wanted to see.
They're more connected than anyone because they're parents, or they are children, or they are grandparents and people who just want to see stories told in a way that they can relate to and that matches their values.
Other streaming services becoming popular alternatives include PureFlix, Minnow, and DW Kids, although another option is just sticking with the classics.
I think an interesting alternative is just rewinding the clock a few years. I don't know about you, we have a cabinet full of movies, right, on DVD and Blu-ray.
Holtz shares some key advice for parents navigating the ever-changing entertainment world. Talk with your kids. Conversations about content they're watching and ideas coming at them can help teach critical thinking and ultimately shape their worldview, rather than allowing the agenda of Hollywood to do it for them. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Coming up, it's a sign that God still answers prayers. We'll explain after the break. Take a look at this massive female Burmese python captured in Florida. It took 3 people to carry it out. It also turned out to be the heaviest ever captured in the Sunshine State, weighing in at 215 pounds and was nearly 18 feet long. The python's last meal was apparently a bobcat. It's why it was removed. Conservationists are trying to protect the native wildlife, the land and water. When a fire recently broke out in Balsora Baptist Church in North Texas, the flames quickly consumed the building. But as firefighters put out the blaze, they spotted a sign of hope. A lone cross stood out among the ruins, parts of which were roughly 100 years old. Despite the devastating loss, the church held a prayer gathering on Sunday, recalling how they used to write prayer requests on tags and hang them on the cross.
Even as this prayer cross is still here, I believe that's a sign of Jesus telling us, I'm still here with you. Amen.
Miraculously, no one was killed in the fire, and the Texas church has already received several $1,000s in donations to rebuild. The cross now a symbol that God still answers prayer. And he most definitely does still answer prayer. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen, and you can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.